Hello, and welcome to Not Just Books, the Williamson County Public Library's monthly television show about what is happening in your county and at the library. I'm Dolores Greenwald, and I'm the director. Thank you for joining us today. We have two very special guests. One is Jeffie Nicholson, who is the Adult Services Manager at the main library, and she's going to be talking about our brand new, updated, very sophisticated computer lab. We're very excited about that. And also, I'm very pleased to announce that we have with us today our county historian, Rick Warwick, and he will be talking about his new book, Rural Scenes of Williamson County. So, and it has everything in it from churches to moonshine. So sit back, stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm very pleased to have with us today Jeffie Nicholson, who is our Adult Services Manager at the main library on Columbia Avenue. And no, she's not here to talk necessarily just about books, but we're going to talk about our new computer lab that we have just got running. So, hello, Jeffie.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here with us. You're pretty much a regular on this program now. We'll talk about one thing or another. Let's talk about the computer lab.
Yes.
We started it, putting it together and reorganizing it in November.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and we're up and running now. Tell us some of the features that it has.
Well, we started back in November planning and looking at the different options we had for bringing our computer lab more up to date to better serve our community. We now have 8 desktops, computers for patrons, much like what we had before, but we also have 16 laptops now, 10 of which are reserved for our computer classes, and 6 of which we are checking out right now to patrons to use in the computer center. We also have added another projector type digital board that when we're teaching the computer classes we'll be able to use, and the instructor almost can be the mouse touching the screen, clicking and going through, so we'll be able
That's
to
interactive.
It's interactive. We can get very specific with what we're showing people during instruction and where they're supposed to be. We're hoping it'll make it a lot easier than us having to run around to every computer and making sure everyone's on the same page.
And that'll enhance our classes quite a bit in the way the reference department is able to present. The desktops don't look like what I would think of still as a desktop. The CPU is on the back of the monitor.
Yes, so that frees up a lot of space under the table so patrons can be more comfortable there. We have mobile tables now, so you can tilt them and roll them around the room so there can be different seating arrangements for different uses of the room. And we also have what I really love, the standing desk now. So you can either stand, and we did get stools for everyone, so you don't have to stand, but you can get up and stand because now they're saying sitting is not as healthy.
Yeah.
But you can stand and work, and we've got 4 of those tables in the room, and they're also mobile, so we can roll them around a little bit.
So previously, the furniture in the lab was classroom based, and it was stationary. You couldn't move it around. You really couldn't use the room much unless you were having classes.
Right.
And this allows the library to have an opportunity to allow people to work together as groups, you know, with the mobile desk movements around and that sort of thing. So it's really exciting.
Yes, it is. We're very glad to have it open and available to our patrons to use.
And I know staff is still kind of working on this, but if you're using a laptop and not in a class, how is that going to work?
Well, you have to stop by the reference desk and check out the laptop. So you need to have a library card to borrow the laptop, and you need that to be able to log on to your laptop too, because we're running Envisionware on it, which requires your library card to sign in and your PIN, which you should have gotten when you set up your library account, although we're happy to help people who haven't used one in a while. And then you leave your driver's license at the reference desk, and we will keep it clipped to a card so that we know which laptop you have borrowed. And you can use it in the computer center right now. In order to enable the wireless printing, the laptops are limited to use in that one specific area.
So there's a lot more that you can do now with the computers in the lab than just have classes with.
Right, and we're exploring different avenues and different things that we can do, because our spaces for meetings and small groups has been limited to the meeting room, which is a larger space, and then the Williamson room, which is 10 people or less in there. And it would be a lot like the Williamson room, because obviously with the computer area, you can't have food and drinks in the space. But you could have a small group in there, and other people can have the opportunity to learn computer skills and all also in that room.
Well, we have, and people may not realize this, but in today's changing world, we have a lot of business people that come in and use their own computers and that sort of thing. And we've also had business people, maybe they have a small business and they work from home, call and want an interview space for people. So, you know, if 2 or 3, you know, people want to collaborate together, it's going to be a great space for that.
Right. Yes, and as a matter of fact, he wasn't in the computer center last week, but I had a restaurateur who came in, and he said hello to me because he had worked in our library for over a year running his restaurants and doing work related to that from the library. And then he moved out of state, but now he's come back.
Now he's back.
And I think he said he was running his father's restaurant.
Oh, wow.
He's finalizing up some things so he can move back to Tennessee.
Well,
so
that's great.
It was good to see him again, and it's always good to hear those stories about library use.
Yeah, it really is interesting to see how the use of the library changes in that. You know, business people maybe they're on the road and have stopped, or maybe, like I said, they're small business and maybe operate from their home, and one reason or another need to come in and use our Wi-Fi. But it's very exciting. When are we looking at starting up classes again? Because we've not been able to have a class in a while, classes, because of the transition that we're going through.
Well, part of the excitement about our computer center is that it has updated software. So it is currently running software for Microsoft Office that we don't have on our staff computers or any of the other public computers yet. So we are waiting for our instruction laptop so that we can start updating our computer classes, presentations, and PowerPoint, so that we'll be able to offer the classes. So we're tentatively looking at August for our start date then.
And you can always find out exactly when we're going to start by signing up for our email. I tell folks that the best way to find out what's going on is to sign up for our email at ref@williamson-tn.org.
Right.
But tell us a little bit, well, like Facebook, for example. It seems like Facebook's always changing. So every time you do a Facebook class and it's changed, what's involved with updating a class?
Well, we go in and we do screenshots along with the step-by-step instructions. So on our PowerPoint, we're showing you each step you take in how you access the software, or you utilize a specific skill within Microsoft Word, for example. So there are multiple screens that we will take you through as we show you how to do a specific item.
And then all of that has to be updated.
It has to be updated. It won't be so hard with the Office suite, Word, Excel, and all that. But for things like Facebook, you update that class like 3 days before you teach it. And then you just hold your breath and cross your fingers because they're going to change something the day of the class.
That was a good point I was going to make. You may not know when Facebook is going to make a change, because sometimes, they'll make a change and say, oh, by the way, we've done this, and it's already.
And sometimes it's just a minor tweak that they're, or, if it's not a major rollout.
Well, what are some of the other classes? I mentioned Facebook, but in you and your staff teach Office, but what else?
Well, we try to cover the most popular basics that people have asked us for. So we do Office, and it's very basic. So if there's someone's just wanting to get started with a computer, we have the introduction to the computer. This is your desktop, this is your monitor, this is your keyboard, and then we have introduction to the internet, talking about the different browsers, different search engines, and then we have the PowerPoint, Word, Excel, Publisher. We offer specific classes on like how to make a Christmas card or how to do business cards. And then we try to touch on the popular online services like Facebook and Twitter. And then we just kind of listen to people and see if there's something they would like to have a class on. We offer occasionally the how to download the ebooks from the library.
Oh, yes.
And that's something we hope we can move into this space, whereas before we were down in the meeting room for it, as well as any of the databases that we have on our website.
Well, I was going to mention that because your Special Collections Department, which Jeffie manages Special Collections Department, Genealogy, and Reference, you do ancestry classes.
Yes, she offers an Introduction to Ancestry class once a month, which has been on hiatus since March, so we're looking forward to resuming that. And it's just the basics and some little tips and tricks for maneuvering ancestry and digging out a little bit more of your family history from that resource.
Well, thank you so much. And find out about our computer lab and our classes. Sign up for our email and go to our website, wcpltn.org. And we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back. I am pleased to have with me today Rick Warwick, who is Williamson County's historian. Rick, when did you become officially the Williamson County historian?
Well, let's see. I think it was the January court meeting of 2017.
Well, what does that mean exactly?
Well, it started back, I think, about in the 1960s. Colonel Camel Brown was our first historian. He had been head of the centennial for the Civil War markers across the state. And he was born here, but he had served a lot in the military. So when he came back, he got interested in the Civil War centennial. And then about 1971 or two, Miss Bowman, Virginia Bowman, was the county historian, and due to ill health, and she resigned in 2016, and I was appointed in 2017.
Rick, I think it was very appropriate gesture to dedicate this book to Miss Bowman.
Well, you can't imagine how much I miss her, because she was my mentor. I mean, I started teaching out at Hillsborough in 1971, and her book, Historic Williamson County Homes and Sites, was published in '71, and so I made friends with her, and our friendship grew over the years. I spent a lot of time in her living room talking about history and projects that needed to be done, and of course she was active was charter member of the Historical Society, which is in our 51st year. And so yes, when she passed, it left a real void in my life and in the county's history.
Yeah, she has really strong influence on Williamson County history, not
She
just
does.
you.
She was born here and she lived here her whole life. She raised her family out on Lewisburg Pike, and yeah, she is missed.
We're here mostly to talk about, even though we could talk about a lot of stuff for a long time, rural scenes of Williamson County. And these are amazing pictures that you have selected for this book. Tell us about pictures and how they relate to history.
Well, I started collecting historical pictures back when I was teaching at Hillsborough to help, add a little vim and vigor to the class. And then when I started working on different articles for the Historical Society, it took photographs. And over the years, I mean, you say the last 30 years or so, I have over 15,000 in my collection. And back in December, I came in one day and I was by myself. Nobody was in the office but me. It was right around Christmas time. And so I said, well, what am I going to do today? And so I said, well, I need to work on my photographs. And so I started going through my Flickr account and categorizing them into schools and churches, things like that. And I came to farm scenes and I put that in a file. And I got to thinking, well, we need to know more about Williamson County before modern times came. And I think I've done a pretty good job of giving examples of what country life was like. I only hesitate to say that the only thing I left out was an outhouse.
Oh.
And I did not have a good period photograph of an outhouse.
Well, that
but they were
surprise
most
me.
essential.
Yeah.
Privies were most essential. But that's one after going through the collection. But I set a certain date of 104 pages. And so I worked with that. So if you'll count the pictures, there's about 240. And I tried to group them in such a way to show how we have changed really in the last 40 years.
Well, when you start to put, because you've done other books besides this, when you start to put a book like this together, and you have an amazing cover. I love the cover. It's so vivid. How do you select, out of all of the pictures that you have, how do you select the cover?
Well, first of all, I choose those that I personally have interest in. And you mentioned the cover, and Margaretta and Florence Meacham were my neighbors. They lived over on Parker Branch Road across the river from me. And I met them in the early 70s and would spend at least once a week, go by after school and spend an hour or two with them. And they were just full of historical facts and information. Their memory was just superb. And this picture, they had in they let me go through their box of pictures one day, and this picture was in there. And then I got a box of glass negatives that were taken by Mr. Lynn Parker, who was their next door neighbor. And he took some marvelous pictures using glass negatives of Hillsborough, Bingham, and Forest Home, which are all along Old Hillsborough Road. And so in deciding on what touched me the most was using the Meacham girls with their pet bull. And I think it says a lot about our time.
It does. And the fact that they're young and barefooted, you can't underestimate them.
Right.
Because they were pretty strong.
They were strong,
Intelligent
even in their
females.
80s. They were out, they would both get a hoe and go through the pastures and chop thistles in their 80s. And it was hot summer, and they'd go and work an hour and then come in. And they were just marvelous, marvelous people. I miss them terribly. And if you look at this picture, they have a kind of a frown on their face, and they look kind of almost children of the corn. But they definitely were not that. Florence graduated from BGA in about 1925 or 6, and Margaret, she graduated from Franklin High School shortly after that.
Well, there's a lot of information in these pictures and in this book about the economy of Williamson County. As you could learn by some of the pictures, farming was a big cash crop, tobacco farming at one point. So you learn, pictures can teach you a lot about the times, not just individuals, but what was going on in their daily lives, economies, and
well, I
social
emphasize
structure.
that. Lane and I moved back to Franklin in 1970, and Williamson County was still basically an agricultural county. They were subdivisions were just beginning to pop up in some numbers, particularly in the north end of the county, and but there's so many people were their basic income was farming and dairy, and livestock, horses were, and cows and hogs and sheep were still a way of making money. And then of course the big farming was coming in along the fertile lands around the Harpeth River. Farmers were growing wheat and soybean and corn in good numbers, even that late. And I tried to emphasize that. I kind of think I gave a good transition from mules to tractors and so on, that we're mechanized now, but we weren't in the beginning.
And I did not know that there were actual toll charges to get in and out of the county. I had no idea.
If you're in Franklin and you wanted to go out, if you'll notice, all the roads coming into Franklin were toll roads. We called them Columbia Pike, Carter's Creek Pike, Del Rio Pike, Franklin or Nashville Pike, Liberty Pike. There was the Chrisman, the road going to Epworth and Arno, what later became Arno Road, going out Murfreesboro Road and then turning there at Arno. That was the Chrisman Mill Turnpike. Then we had Nolensville Turnpike, Hillsboro South Hall Turnpike. And by the 1920s, if you'll read the newspapers, a lot of people in Franklin were particularly concerned that people were hesitating coming to town because they had to pay a toll. And so they just said, let's try to take over the turnpike. So periodically, turnpikes weren't really making much money, and so they were rather eager if they could get some money from the county, they would sell. Then in Governor Austin Peay in the 1920s our roads were improving, and the state got involved in building roads, and so a part of that road from Chicago south that came right through Franklin, we call it Highway 31, but then it was the Jackson Highway, and it came through town, and the state of Tennessee made a deal with the county. If you will buy the turnpikes, we will build the road. And so the county ended up buying the Nashville Franklin Turnpike and the Franklin Spring Hill Columbia Turnpike, the Nolensville Pike, and the state built the state roads. So in 1925, all the toll gates were lifted.
There's also historical significance. It's some of the farms you mentioned, the Holt family farm, which has been, the Holt family's been in the news lately because of the donations to the Brentwood Library and to the...
We call it the Thomas Holt farm. Thomas Holt, and of course the last relative to live there was Mr. Charles Witherspoon, and when he passed, then really the money, they had sold the farm over a period of time, and then he and his uncle and aunt had made really a gift to Brentwood and the Brentwood Methodist Church for the library, public library, and for the Methodist Church, because Charles was the organist there for many years, and also he was kind of the financial keeper for many years after he retired from teaching.
One of the things that is a lot of fun, and some folks may not know that it's really a strong history in the South, and that's moonshine. You've got some great moonshine pictures in here. I
have, and you know, that's a long tradition. Really, Prohibition came to Tennessee much earlier than the 1920 Volstead Act. And so families, it was legal to make whiskey, and there were several distilleries across the county. The most notable one in my neighborhood, of course, was the Boyd's up in Steelhouse Hollow, which was on past where the old poorhouse was. And then, of course, by the Volstead Act, that did away with manufacturing of alcohol legally, and then popped up all over the county, rigged moonshine stills that produced a lot of moonshine.
Well, it's worth getting the book just to see those pictures, because those are great. And speaking of that, how does one get a copy of this book if they're interested?
This book can be obtained at the Heritage Foundation over on Bridge Street at the old jail, and it's $20. And you'll, as I said, you'll get 240 photographs, and that ought to be worth
That's
something.
a bargain.
That ought to be a bargain. I kind of like this format. I used back in December. I did a book on the history, a pictorial history of the square, and we had really good success. It's a format that, you know, if you stick with 104 pages, you can get a good bit of information on it. Your photographs are easily presented, and I can get them printed and then sell them for $20 and make a little money for another project.
Yeah.
And then people are getting, I think, a good deal.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours, but this is great. And your book is wonderful, and you're such an asset to the county, and we appreciate everything that you do. You promise me you'll be back.
I'll be back. I enjoy it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
He helped me learn to read.
It is the best feeling in the world. They impact me. I'm proud of the work that I'm doing.
There's been dramatic results in our kindergarten classroom this year from having a foster grandparent.
Thank you for joining us again on Not Just Books. I hope you enjoyed the program. If you have any comments for any ideas for future programs, you can let us know on Facebook and Twitter at facebook.com/WCPLTN or twitter.com/WCPLTN. And you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter at ref@williamson-tn.org. And I'd like to thank my very special guest for spending time with us today, Jeffie Nicholson, who is our Adult Services Supervisor, and Rick Warwick, who is our county historian, talking about his new book, Rural Scenes of Williamson County. And until next time, enjoy your world and read.